Now, just a little warning at the start that there will be major spoilers in this video for the latest episode of The Bad Batch, which is the 5th episode, or the one called Rampage. So if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want anything ruined, it's a really good time to click away. Okay, so I'll start out by saying that this was yet another good episode, not overly amazing or anything, but certainly a fun and enjoyable episode, and I once again can't help but marvel at just how incredible this show looks, how great and smooth the animation is, how it has come so far since the early days of the Clone Wars. It just keeps blowing me away, as does the music, sound effects, voice acting, and so on. Everything on the production level is fantastic. Once again this week then, not really much to talk about in terms of overall plot progression or anything like that, which is fine. As I said in my last review, not every single episode is going to or has to have huge reveals or moments, especially in a 16 episode season. Clone Wars, for example, more than 100 episodes, and it didn't always have monumental episodes, but more often than not they were good if not great in their own right. And so yeah, in a show like this, you are going to get episodes that are more or less self-contained little adventures that maybe offer clues to future events. In this one, the Bad Batch learn the identity of the bounty hunter who is after them, or more specifically after Omega, and it's of course Fennec Shand, who we have seen in The Mandalorian. We also saw Wrecker randomly complaining about his head hurting at one point, which I think makes it pretty clear that after hitting his head a couple episodes in a row, something is going to happen with that or go wrong with this ship at some point in a future episode. I mean, he even fights or wrestles a juvenile Rancor in this episode, so I feel like there's a really good chance he took a few more shots to the head during that. And speaking of that Rancor, I guess we're maybe supposed to assume that's the same Rancor we'll see in Jabba's palace during Return of the Jedi, the one that Luke ends up killing, which is kind of a sad end for her since she was kind of a likable little Rancor. But then again, in Legends, there was a whole other story for the Rancor. It was actually a birthday gift to Jabba, so maybe they're not supposed to be one and the same. Maybe this is a different Rancor from the one that, again, Luke will end up killing one day. But anyway, going back to the chip for a moment, I think it's obvious the one in Wrecker's head is going to malfunction somehow, and that they'll have to find a way to remove it before it kills him. Now, I don't think it's going to turn him or anything like that when it malfunctions. They've made it pretty clear they're kind of immune to the effects of the chip, so I don't know that it makes sense if it just suddenly starts to malfunction and affects him. We also met Cid in this episode. She was the one who gave them the job of rescuing the Rancor, though she forgot to mention it was a Rancor. And I'm going to assume she'll indeed end up being a reoccurring character. They kind of made that obvious at the end, and that they will take more jobs from her in the future as the Bad Batch slowly comes to realize that they have to do something to earn credits, not only to survive, but to stay ahead of Fennec Shand and anyone and everyone else who may eventually come after them or after Omega. And speaking of that, of the jobs that they'll no doubt have to end up taking in the future or future episodes, I can't help but notice that the, you could say, power level of the Bad Batch has certainly diminished in the last few episodes. This week they got bested and captured by a small group of slavers, whereas a few episodes back, the first episode, they were easily taking out essentially a whole army of battle droids. And mind you, this isn't meant to be a complaint or anything. I'm actually glad they've toned them down a bit from that first episode and from that story arc in the Clone Wars, because they were, shall we say, a bit much, and I'm sure they'll still have their moments to shine from time to time where they do incredible, cool things. This show would likely get pretty boring if they just literally ran headfirst into every single encounter and took everyone and everything out with ease. Along with this, I should point out that obviously they were trained to fight droids and had probably done almost exclusively that while they were part of the Grand Army of the Republic. In other words, everything they're doing now is completely new and different to them, and along with this, they've also are missing the obvious from time to time, or what should be obvious if they had what you could call a more normal existence in the galaxy. They miss things like having to pay for information, for example. Also, they do seem to always point out and mention that they're doing things they've never done before, taking on different types of missions than they used to, like how they went out of their way to mention or say in this episode that they've never rescued a child from slavers before, and then they proceed to say something like, how hard could this possibly be, as if they just believe everything is going to be really easy for them because it's been easy before against droids. Basically here, yeah, I think they have been toned down a bit in terms of power level, but the show is doing all it can to explain that, to make it sort of a believable transition from unstoppable droid destruction force to a team that would get captured by a small group of slavers. And like I said, I think they needed to be brought down a notch or two, though they may have brought them down a little too much. And going along with all this, it seems like pretty much every week or every episode, Omega is being given a chance or moment to bail them out after they maybe underestimate something and get themselves into a jam or get captured, like they did again this week. Which, yeah, I get they want to show that she can be an asset to the team, and she did still sort of get captured here too, and it's not like she's doing anything too crazy to save them. But I just hope this isn't a formula we see used too often. Though don't get me wrong, I still am enjoying the character of Omega. It could be and maybe should be annoying and maybe is to some people, which I would understand. But I do absolutely love her sense of wonder and how she acts like a sort of normal, regular kid might act in this situation. I like the stuff where she's playing with the comm link because that's exactly what a kid would do. I also like that after last week's episode where they basically lost her or she was kidnapped by Fennec Shand, they now made rules for her and made her memorize those rules, that she's both becoming more a part of the team, yet the Bad Batch is also taking on a bit more of a parental role with her. They're becoming a family, you could certainly say. And though I think this whole dynamic could have felt out of place or off so far, I do think it's working. So far, pretty much everything with Omega is working, though again, I don't want them to fall into this formula that she has to bail them out each and every week. And speaking of Omega, she was the one who figured out who Sid was, and I'm not sure if this was meant to show or imply great intuition on her part, if it's a lucky guess, or maybe if it's some sort of force ability. She seemed to look at her for just a second and then figured out who she was, though, yeah, I think all of us at home had guessed by then it was Sid. I have to say, it was also cool to be taken to Ord Mantell, to see it in animation. I've been intrigued by that name and that planet ever since it briefly gets mentioned in The Empire Strikes Back about the bounty hunter they run into there. And though we've seen it before in books and comics, again, it was nice to be able to actually see it in animation. Though, if I'm remembering right, there was an episode of Forces of Destiny that was set there too. But anyway, we also got to see some more Zygerian slavers. I enjoyed the Clone Wars arc with them in it. Always enjoyed how suave Anakin was with the Queen in that story arc. He certainly learned a lot about flirting with women in his time since he flirted with Padme in episode 2. Other than that, though, not really a whole lot to discuss in regards to this episode. Again, I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. Just not a whole lot to really dig into. I was a little surprised we didn't learn who had sent Fennec Shand after them, or after Omega, I should say. I think the obvious answer has to be the Kaminoans, but maybe it's not them. Maybe there will be a surprise twist, and it'll be someone else entirely after them, or after her. But I guess we'll only figure that out in time. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you thought of this episode, or what you thought of what I had to say about this episode. Did you like it? Did you not? Have you noticed a power reduction in the Bad Batch, or am I just crazy? Whatever the case may be, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.